And next, all about those new home videotape machines and how yours might get you into trouble as the morning exchange continues.
Perhaps you saw the ad in the paper yesterday of the Bill J. Cox series of reports on video piracy and the new home videotape machines. We saw a picture of a man in a nice suit behind bars. And the reason he was there, the implication is because he had pirated something that he wasn't supposed to have. He had stolen. With us this morning is a man who understands what's going on in the business. He is Jules Yarnell, who is a special counsel to the Recording Industry Association of America on the questions of piracy. And we're going to talk a little bit about the rules and the laws that obtain in the matter of these home video units that we have here. What is piracy?
Piracy is the unauthorized duplication of sound recordings, motion pictures, videotapes, any intellectual property that is copyrighted.
And piracy is against the law almost by definition, I guess.
Well, it's against the law federally. It's against the law in about 49 states of the United States. It's against the law in most of the civilized countries in the world.
Mr. Yarnell, if somebody were to record the morning exchange program on their home machine and then play it back in the evening for somebody else, would that be piracy?
Yes, it would if the morning exchange were copyrighted, as I assume it is, and there is some value to having that available for redistribution at a later date.
That'd be the question, though, wouldn't it? If you were just going to do it for yourself, would that be against the law?
Well, if you do it for yourself, you're still violating one of the requirements of the copyright law, which gives the exclusive right to the copyright proprietor to portray that particular program, to display it. It's not only a question of whether you're doing it on a commercial basis to make a profit. The new law that became effective January 1st of last year took away the profit element.
Well, it almost sounds as though these things are just implicitly illegal.
Well, they can be used for making TV movies of your baby's first steps, probably even a birthday party in the home, but in my own opinion, using them to reproduce broadcast either movies or television programs is actually a violation of the rights of the copyright proprietor.
Well, these things are advertised all the time as being the perfect way to find out what's going on television when you're not at home. And people have little clocks on them here, and you set them up, and you cause them to turn on at a certain time. The receiver is built right into the instrument right here. You don't even have to have a TV set hooked up to it. And you can get Starsky and Hutch if you're not at home, or the Super Bowl if you can't happen to be there on Sunday afternoon, and tape it and look at it at later use, maybe even have a group of people in. Now, you're suggesting that that very likely is a contravention of the laws on copyright.
I would say so, yes, sir.
Well, gosh.
What's your industry going to do about this? Because this is the rage. I mean, these things started out, costing $1,500, I think now.
This is $650 right now.
That's right, and they're probably going to be cheaper than that before long. What can you possibly do about this?
Well, MCA Universal and Walt Disney Studios brought an action against the Sony Corporation, the Sony Corporation of America, number of distributors, retailers, and in fact several home television users, based on the use of the Sony Betamax. And of course, in one of the allegations in that case, which I think give the case the strongest flavor, is the use by the manufacturers and the distributors of that product of advertising which leads the public to tape movies and syndicated shows. Now, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, but there are organizations that sell overseas and to oil rig installations and to various subsidiaries of American corporations, programs that appear in the United States regularly to keep the expatriated Americans informed and amused. And one of them is Overseas National, ONISI, O-N-I-S-I, which handles the 60 Minutes program, I think CBS News. Others handle WABC's Wide World of Sports.
Well, I got to believe, though, that the average criminal type who buys this machine doesn't care if the people that you represent, your authors, your actors, get any money or not. What does he care? He has this thing, and he records the programs he wants, and I can't believe that the police of Brook Park or Shaker Heights or some other suburb around here are going to break down somebody's door and seize their videotape of last Sunday's football game.
Well, it's unlikely that they'll be breaking down doors. The question of doing it in the home for your own use is one that entails a lot of policy considerations. People do consider their home the castle, and I'm sure that the concentration would be in the areas where it's done on a commercial, large-scale basis.
But the real truth of it is you can't do anything about the individual in his home, can you, who records for the amusement of himself and have his friends over and doesn't sell them?
Under appropriate circumstances, I think it can be, because the law is what makes it illegal. And the fact that people do it doesn't make it any more legal or moral. You have people buying stolen merchandise from fences. If you know that you're paying $50 for a brand new 21-inch color television set, you know darn well that it's not because you're a very good bargainer that you're getting that price. That's hot. And people do it.
And so what's happening is that anytime there's a really consequential film on television, people are setting up their little home recorders, and they're grabbing that, and then they're making dubs for their friends. Perhaps they're selling them. I noticed the other day some people were arrested and charged with piracy and will possibly, after a trial, end up in jail.
And they claim they're collectors.
Mm-hmm. Collectors.
I guess, as the officer who was previously speaking said, everybody claims that he's the victim of police brutality. The FBI has been doing a really marvelous job in the protection of copyrights.
Won't it really boil down in the final analysis, though, to the fact that if this is a bigger industry than the people you represent, that this is going to win? Because that's where the dollars are.
I really don't know. I think the courts are not quite that attuned to the commercial aspects. I think that a small company can very frequently beat an IBM in the courts, and that's been demonstrated. So I don't think the size of the industry or the size of the defendant or plaintiff is really the determining factor. If the law is clear, the courts will apply it.
Well, over here is the playback of what he just said.
Let's record Mr. Yarnell commercially now, and we will sell his tape, and we'll put him in jail.
That wouldn't be a bad idea.
We're taping right now, as you can see.
That's right. We're committing a violation right now, aren't we?
Although, I don't know.
No, this is your program, and you're perfectly at liberty to tape your program.
No, I'm going to sell it.
You sell it? As long as I get my cut, it's all right.
Okay, let's take a break here. I'll stop this thing and we'll wind it back and look at it. It'll probably be real interesting. See what's going to come out over there. We'll be right back. We'll take some questions on this subject. Jules Yarnell is with us this morning, and the subject is piracy. We'll continue after this.
If the
He's talking about piracy of the materials that are broadcast. I guess the thing is that the things that we broadcast are the product and owned by the people who create them. And if you record them, then you're taking something that belongs to somebody else and using them in a way that they were not intended to be used. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Is that the way the industry views it?
Wasn't there years ago, I recall, a lawsuit brought by the music licensing people against stores that played, like they rebroadcast FM stations through their PA systems?
Yes.
Illegal.
Yes. I think that was the chicken case.
Chicken?
Yes. Involved a sort of fried chicken type of restaurant. And there had been many cases for years involving the use of broadcast music in stores and in restaurants.
This is the same kind of thing then, basically, isn't it?
Well, it's going a little beyond that. There they were playing it for the public, and there was a definite commercial purpose. It's somewhat different if you play it for the public and there was a definite commercial purpose. It's somewhat different if you play it in your own home for your own amusement, and particularly if you play it when you're not home and view it later on. One of the problems is that the TV station will have commercials, which I think is a necessary element in your
You
business.
better believe it, sir.
If these things are recorded on this kind of equipment, they now have certain gadgets that will permit them to take the TV commercial off, so that they end up with a product.
There should be a law against that.
Without, oh, that's absolutely right. You see, it depends on whose ox is born.
Right.
Now, if the TV commercial has been removed and you just have the program, it becomes a different program. Your consideration for having broadcast it has already been removed.
Yes.
And it's particularly bad with motion pictures such as Gone with the Wind that come back every 2 years, and which the TV station sells a lot of commercial time for, and if everybody has it in his own home, there isn't that much of a demand.
Yeah.
Did you record Mr. Yarnell?
Yes, I'm recording him again. I have a whole bunch of him on tape, and I'm getting even more, even as
I
we
hope I
speak.
get a copy.
I wonder about how big an industry the I know in recording they call it bootleg, but it maybe is an appropriate term here as well. How big an industry could that become, or how big an industry is it right now? The piracy of materials off the air.
Well, the piracy of sound recordings had grown to the point where it was well over $500 million worth in the United States alone. In the world, I would say a very conservative estimate was well over $1 billion. It has been whittled down very substantially here, primarily due to the very, very effective work by the FBI throughout the country. And incidentally, you have a very fine FBI unit here in Cleveland. But the very efficiency of the FBI in rooting out pirate products all over the country led to a new problem called counterfeiting, where not only the sounds were duplicated, but the actual packaging, labeling, etc.
So it looked like the tape cassette that they sold looked like exactly like the original one.
That's right, and those were then sold in legitimate department stores, record stores, chain stores, and the public was being deceived, and the record companies, of course, were being deceived too.
Well, now lately there have been a number of raids, and we keep hearing figures like hundreds of millions of dollars worth, street value of dubs have been seized, and equipment for dubbing them have been seized. How do those raids take place?
Well,
tell us about
along the East Coast in the sound recording field, I happen to be familiar with this because I worked closely with the FBI on this particular matter. We had about 29 places raided, and about $150 million worth of finished recordings, that's 8 tracks, LPs, pirate and counterfeit, seized, as well as equipment and components. Now, this was based on a very, very intricate undercover operation that the FBI had conducted for about 2 years. One of the things they did was set up a store out on Long Island, and they established credibility as entrepreneurs, and of course were being approached constantly by the shady people in the industry, and moving along from one to the other, they were able to make the case. And that is, I would say, probably going to be about 50% of the piracy in the eastern United States that was taken care of just on that one series of raids. But it took a great deal of effort, and it took a great deal of concentration by the FBI, and in my opinion there are some very, very well organized people involved, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are RICO prosecutions.
We have to pause for a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back and take a few phone calls from our viewers out there. 578-1000 is our number. And if you'd like to ask Mr. Yarnell a question about what we've been discussing today, give us a call. We'll be right back.
The wind that comes back every 2 years, and which the TV station sells a lot of commercial time for, and if everybody has it in his own home, there isn't that much of a demand.
Gosh, isn't that interesting?
Record Mr. Yarnell?
Yes, I'm recording him. I have a whole bunch of him on tape, and I'm getting even more, even as
I
we
hope I get a
speak.
copy.
I wonder about how big an industry This is interesting. Golly.
That's just like we were there. That's
It's perfect. The picture is perfect. Look at that. It's amazing. And that's the playback of what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. We want to take some of your calls on this subject. Mr. Yarnell, how do the networks feel about this? The fact that a good program comes down the line, and let's say a MASH, and you grab it off the air, or a Starsky and Hutch, and you grab it and put it in your little library on a little tape that costs you $15. And when the playback time comes, there'll be a whole host of Americans who've already seen that show and who have it in their libraries. Are the networks upset about this technology and the proliferation of these little inexpensive sets?
I don't think they're quite as upset about it as they will be when there are a lot more units in the home. I think they're more upset about the commercial piracy, where their programs are being sold to offshore installations and abroad by unlicensed people.
So they're not worried about the guy who owns this particular machine and has it at home. They're worried about somebody stealing their stuff and making a lot of money out of it.
That's
in other
correct.
words, short-circuiting the process and taking profits that are rightfully theirs.
That's correct, but I think there is a growing awareness on their part of the potential dangers in the future.
Well, let's take a few phone calls, see what kinds of questions our friends have out there. Good morning. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment.
All right.
And that is, I think an individual who's watching the television set in his home has every right to copy that, because he is indirectly paying to watch the TV, whether the TV set is on or not, because you're on the air because of your sponsors, and we pay for the products that the sponsors put out. So we are paying for the television set, and we have every right to copy it. Thank you.
Okay, an interesting economic argument.
Well, I don't agree with his premise entirely. By viewing and by receiving, either directly or extrasensorily, the message of the commercial, he is in effect paying for his viewing of the thing, but he is not paying for the copying of the thing.
the ownership of it.
Yes, the visual image that I have of something is a different thing from my reproduction of that image through a copying
It might
machine.
be more like, you say, you pay $3.50 to go to a movie, but that doesn't mean
You
that
can have
you own the, that you can have the
That's
movie
right.
when you
I
come
can't
out.
take the seat home with me
Yeah.
after I leave.
And you can't take the print either.
That's right. And when I take a ride on a bus after I've paid my fare, I can't take the bus home with me to use the next morning. I think when that case is finally decided, and I believe it will be coming to trial sometime this month, there will be some very interesting results if it ever goes to conclusion, because I think the law is fairly clear based on precedents that many of the activities engaged in by the sellers of this equipment violate the copyrights.
Hey, your question, please.
Yes, good morning. I'd
Good
like
morning.
to know, is there something being done to stop the manufacturing of the unit for home use? And if not, why are they just going after the consumer rather than going to the manufacturer?
Okay. We'll have to arrest Japan, won't we?
Well, that's a possibility. We once tried to beat them. The fact is that there is an effort made by two motion picture companies, as I said, the MCA Universal and Disney Studios, who brought a suit not just against home retail customers. They brought it against the manufacturer, the distributors, and retailers. And I think that will, to a large extent, determine what the status of the law is.
Any way you look at it, we're headed for a revolution in communications, aren't we?
No question about it.
We're glad you came this morning to explain to us a little bit of the complex field that you're dealing with. Thank you very much for coming here today. And thanks to Bill Jaycox for loaning us this and that, and we've seen how it works here this morning.